And now, a conversation with the mayor of Mesa, Arizona, USA, John Giles, First Deputy Mayor of New York City, USA, Sheena Wright, with CBS News national correspondent, anchor of the Saturday edition of the CBS Weekend News, Adriana Diaz.
See if I can get up on this chair here. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad we're having this conversation with First Deputy Mayor Wright from my native New York City and Mesa, Arizona Mayor John Giles, where I may retire one day.
That's my hope, my fondest hope for all of you, is that you will retire in Mesa.
A quick plug there. So we're here talking about the migrant crisis, which has united probably many of you in the room, whether you're near the border or far from the border. We have two mayors who are dealing with this and a first deputy mayor every single day, so it's really important to get their perspective. It's something that me and my colleagues have been covering for decades, but through the years certainly. I recently was based in Chicago, so we would visit police stations where migrants had to sleep on the floor because there was nowhere else to go. And what they were experiencing was a lot of confusion. They told us a lack of information. And nearly everyone at one police station I went to was from Venezuela. What our reporting is showing us is that there's been a change in the demographics of migration right now. Recently, we're seeing a lot of Venezuelans who don't have ties in the US, who therefore are relying more on city services. It's not like many of the Central Americans who came before who might have family or sponsors. Is that what you're seeing on the ground? I'll start with you, First Deputy Mayor.
Absolutely, and as everyone knows, New York City is a city of immigrants. And what has been the traditional story is that people would come, like you would send a scout, like my family is from Jamaica, and they would get rooted, they'd get a job, and they would send for the next wave and the next wave. And it would be a growth over time. This is a situation where you have literally hundreds of thousands of people showing up all at once with no ties and no ability to work. So we've had 130,000 people come in over the past 12 months with no ability to work, and 65,000 people that we're still caring for every single day, providing housing, food, school, everything. And it has been really unprecedented. Expected to cost the city over 3 years about $12 billion to support all of the people who are coming. So it is an unprecedented challenge, and we're not built for it, and really we need some urgent solutions.
Mayor Giles, you're about 2 hours from the border. What's been your experience, and where are you seeing the most strain on your resources? Is it housing? Is it providing school for kids? Is it trying to balance the needs of your local community, the unhoused, with the needs of this new population?
Well, we have seen changes, as you mentioned earlier. Well, I was on our city council back in the 1990s, and I remember back then we had primarily illegal immigrants that were from Mexico, and on our street corners we had day laborers that were waiting for folks to come by and hopefully give them a day's labor. And I remember complaining to the federal government back then, and this was in the 90s. And since then, I've been the mayor for 9 years. I remember right after I was elected mayor, we had a surge of unaccompanied minors. And that's when I first began getting phone calls from the small evangelical Spanish-speaking churches in my city that were being asked by the federal government, can we bring 3 busloads of people to your church tomorrow? And will you take care of them, get overnight, and feed them, and get them on their way to their next location? And oh, by the way, they're going to show up without shoes and without backpacks and without the basic necessities of life, because we'll have taken that away from them at the border. So, and then we went from unaccompanied minors to families, and now, as you indicated, it's a lot of non-Mexican migrants that don't have resources. But we were typically kind of a way station, and we were set up with Spanish speakers and folks to accommodate people with those needs. Recently, we had busloads of French-speaking Africans showed up, and so that kind of threw us for a loop. You know, wait a minute, we got to adjust. So we have seen it ebb and flow and change, but the constant has been that this has been, for border state mayors, this has been something that we've been very concerned about and trying to get the attention of the federal government for decades. very excited that we now have New York City and other advocates joining that chorus of local leaders that are asking for some federal assistance.
So on that point, you know, whether you think it's moral to bus migrants or too political to bus migrants, one of the objectives of Governor Greg Abbott was to get northern cities and cities across the country to start getting a bit of a taste of what border towns and border cities are dealing with. Have you seen any value in that?
Well, we all need to condemn using people as political pawns. That's immoral. So I don't want to give any credit to that at all. But I am very, as I indicated earlier, very grateful to Mayor Adams, Deputy Mayor Wright, for adding their voices to this topic. We need to raise awareness here in Washington, D.C. that this is not this is kind of a favorite political problem, that politicians have used for decades. This is an emotional issue. This is an issue that they can use to stir up their base. This is not an issue that a lot of people want to solve. This is an issue that they want to use for political advantage. And we need people to see this as a problem that needs to be solved, not as a political wedge that can be used to raise money.
How are mayors from cities as different as your cities able to work together to find solutions for this problem?
I think there's a huge opportunity, and I do think that when cities like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. are faced with this head-on, what border cities have been faced with for decades, it really presents an opportunity to work together. This is something that, you know, crosses political party. This is going to be the new normal. I think one of the things that we also have to appreciate with all of the challenges in Central and South America, West Africa, climate migration, it's going to cause great upheaval. We have to think certainly nationally and globally, how are we going to deal with massive waves of people coming, particularly to cities where there's opportunity. And so we're excited, certainly, for this mayor in particular, who leads a coalition of the U.S. Conference of Mayors on immigration reform, to really bring everybody together to start to map out a strategy.
The U.S. Conference of Mayors, and you of course lead the Immigration Reform Task Force, has been calling for the Biden administration to extend temporary protected status for Venezuelan migrants. That was granted, that was extended. Are you seeing the impact of those migrants now being able to work in the U.S.? Has that alleviated a little bit of the pressure, Mayor Giles?
We were very grateful for that change, and really because, not just because Venezuelans are all that unique in the mix of the problem here, but because it represented a shift of the model. As the Deputy Mayor and I were talking just backstage, and work authorization is one of the very practical solutions to this that will help alleviate this problem. So in the past, we'd bring people in, they entered the United States 100% legally, but they did so without work authorization. And so it created this warehousing situation in New York City and other places where literally tens of thousands of people were just being stored with no hope. You know, that's a humanitarian crisis, I think, you know, beyond imagination. So the shift with the Venezuelan policy is it acknowledged the reality that in my city, I have more jobs than I have people. Everywhere I go, there's a help wanted sign, and every business leader that I talk to, the first issue that we talk about is workforce. And at the same time, I have this ironic problem of busloads of people coming to my community that cannot work. That is an obvious problem, isn't it? We need people to be smart enough to connect those two small dots to one another. So this shift with the Venezuelan policy was very important.
Would you like either of you to see the TPS program extended to other groups from other countries in particular?
Absolutely. You know, if you've come here, as Mayor said, in a particular way, you should automatically get the right to work. And I think what's really challenging is, even though TPS has been designated for Venezuelans, it's still very hard to get You have to spend about $500 for the application, which makes no sense. You've got to go through still a lengthy process. So we're setting up a center to help people apply for this, and that's hundreds of people really trying to be in service to thousands of people trying to get work authorization. And that's something as well the federal government should be doing and should be certainly making easier to do. But we need it across the board.
For people entering from anywhere?
Well, there's a list of countries, and so many of the people that are coming to New York City and the other cities that I mentioned are from Venezuela, from Ecuador, from countries in West Africa. So we know we have a specific request for specific countries where they have the asylee status and need the work authorization.
So for people who get the asylum status,
yes,
who come in through that legal process. First Deputy Mayor, as you mentioned, you have 65,000
yes,
migrants in the housing system right now. The mayor's office said that New York City is full and past its breaking point. And he announced just this past Monday that now there's going to be a 60-day limit for migrant families to remain in the city's shelter system. Of course, you're going to have caseworkers helping people find other housing. But how can that not lead or allow families to be living on the streets?
I think what is one of the things that's unique about New York is that we have a right to shelter. And so there is an unlimited amount of time where you can be housed by the city. And that 65,000 is on top of another 60,000 New Yorkers who are already in our homeless system. So our homeless system has doubled, right, in 12 months. And there simply is not enough space or resource. And we have been negotiating with our stakeholders around this right that it's just unsustainable. So $12 billion for us means that we'll have cuts to our education, cuts to our public safety, infrastructure across the board, and we have to balance. And so we are working very closely with the families, providing intensive case management, reticketing people, and helping them to move on as best as possible. After 60 days, if they haven't found a place, they can come back and we can try to figure it out. But as you can imagine, every single day, like last week, we had 3,600 people come through. And in a moment's notice, you have to figure out where they're going to stay for the night, for the week, for several months. And so we're trying to make room because it's not abating at all, and we're really trying to do the best we can.
But will you guarantee housing for a family who hasn't been able to find something through a caseworker?
Won't be a guarantee, and no other place that's dealing with these issues in all the cities that I mentioned, I think, has an unlimited. There are limits, time limits for some of the resources and services that are being offered. So we are unique in that sense. So we haven't gotten to that 60-day yet, but we're going to do our dead level best to help support people. But we are past the point where our compassion is unlimited, but our resources are just not.
And just to end this conversation, something that both of you and probably everyone in this room has been calling for is comprehensive immigration reform at the federal level. Things are moving a little slow at the Capitol these days. So assuming that won't happen anytime soon, what is one action you'd like to see from the federal government that you think can really make an impact now? I'll start with you, Mayor Giles. Well,
we need a raised awareness. We need, again, a commitment to viewing this as a problem as opposed to an opportunity for political chaos. But to answer your question, I think we already touched on it. Work authorization is a short-term, very achievable thing that I think we could wrap our heads around that would provide some respite and allow people the opportunity, get us out of the crisis situation that we find ourselves in now. And I think that's very attainable. Maybe through executive order or otherwise, if we can just figure out a way to tweak that, maybe similar to the DACA solution that President Obama came up with, out of necessity a couple of administrations ago. But I would focus around work authorization. At least then we can get people productive. We can get people out of warehousing and work on hopefully a change in attitude that will allow us to take a long-term solution.
First Deputy Wright.
I would say the federal government, in addition to all of those things, operationally taking control of the situation. So coming into the cities, providing the resources that are necessary to provide the services to people. The federal government has places, they have money, and so that's kind of immediate. And the long term is a decompression strategy. Bring everybody to the table. There are lots of communities that have urgent work needs and opportunities. And if we can really come out with a strategic plan of how are we going to repatriate, repopulate, get people to where there's actual opportunity and set up for success, that benefits everyone.
Amen.
Thank you so much for your perspective, for the both of you. And that is the end. My clock has run out of this segment.
Thank you.
Thank you.